Captain Jake Morrison stared at the twisted metal hull floating in the darkness ahead of them. The alien ship looked like nothing he had ever seen before. Its surface was covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and change when he looked at them too long. Black scorch marks ran along its sides, and several holes showed where something had torn through the metal like paper. How long has it been drifting out here? Jake asked his first officer, Curran Wells, who stood beside him. On the bridge of the Pioneer's Hope, Curran checked her readings again. Based on the radiation patterns, I would say at least 50 years, maybe more. The ship is completely dead. No power, no life signs, nothing. Jake nodded slowly. They were 3 weeks out from Earth, heading home after a routine survey mission. In the outer colonies, finding a derelict alien vessel this far from known space was not something that happened every day. In fact, it had never happened before. Humanity had been exploring the stars for over a century, but they had never found proof of intelligent alien life until now. "Sir, we should board it," said Dr. Lisa Parker, the ship's xenobiologist. She had been quiet until now, but Jake could see the excitement in her eyes. This could be the most important discovery in human history. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all good people, experienced and reliable. Tony Rodriguez, his security chief, was checking his weapon systems. Bobby Hayes, the chief engineer, was running diagnostics on their own ship. Amy Foster, the communications officer, was trying to detect any signals from the alien vessel. "Any luck with communications, Amy?" Jake asked. Amy shook her head. "Nothing, Captain. The ship is completely silent. If there was anyone alive over there, we would hear something." Jake made his decision. "All right, we go aboard. Tony, Lisa, you're with me. Corinne, you have the bridge. If anything goes wrong, get us out of here immediately." The boarding party suited up in the shuttle bay. Jake had been on dozens of salvage operations, but this felt different. The alien ship seemed to watch them as they approached in their small shuttle. Tony piloted them carefully through one of the larger holes in the hull dot inside the alien ship. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness. The corridors were wider than those on human ships, and the walls curved in ways that hurt to look at. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing faintly with their own light. "The air is breathable," Lisa reported, checking her scanner. "Oxygen levels are actually higher than Earth normal. Temperature is a bit cold, but not dangerous." They moved deeper into the ship. Jake noticed that their footsteps echoed strangely, as if the metal itself was alive. Tony stayed alert, his weapon ready, but they encountered no signs of life. Just empty corridors and rooms filled with equipment they could not understand. "Captain, over here," Lisa called from ahead. She had found what looked like a cargo bay. It was enormous, stretching far beyond what their lights could reach. But it was not empty. Hundreds of cylindrical pods filled the space, arranged in neat rows. Each pod was about the size of a coffin, made from the same strange metal as the ship's hull. Most of the pods were dark, but a few still glowed with a soft blue light. "Stasis pods?" Tony said quietly. They were carrying passengers. Lisa approached one of the glowing pods and cleared away the frost that covered its viewing window. She peered inside and immediately stepped back, her face pale even through her helmet's faceplate. "What is it?" Jake asked. "You need to see this for yourself, Captain." Jake looked through the window and felt his stomach turn. Inside the pod was a creature unlike anything he had ever imagined. It was about the size of a large dog, but that was where any similarity to Earth animals ended. Its skin was oily and mottled, shifting between purple and brown like a bruise. 6 spider-like legs ended in appendages that looked like suction cups. Multiple eyes dotted its head, each one moving independently of the others. Its mouth was filled with rows of needle-sharp teeth. Is it alive? Jake asked, though part of him hoped the answer was no. Lisa checked her scanner. Yes, barely. Its life signs are very weak. The stasis system is failing. If we don't do something soon, it will die. Jake looked at the other pods. Most were dark and cold. Whatever had been inside them was long dead. But this one creature had somehow survived when all the others had not. We should leave it, Tony said firmly. Look at that thing, Captain. Those teeth, those claws. It's obviously a predator. Lisa shook her head. We can't just let it die. This is a living, breathing alien life form. Do you understand what this means? We're looking at proof that we're not alone in the universe. We're looking at a nightmare, Tony replied. That thing would probably eat us the moment it woke up. Jake studied the creature in the pod. It was definitely ugly, probably the most revolting thing he had ever seen. But it was also helpless, trapped and dying in a broken machine. The captain in him said to play it safe and leave. The human in him said something different. We take it with us, Jake decided, but we keep it contained and sedate it until we can. Study it properly. Tony started to protest, but Jake held up his hand. That's an order, Chief. Lisa, can you safely transport the pod back to our ship? Lisa nodded eagerly. A pod has its own power supply. I can jury-rig it to work with our systems. We can set up a containment area in the science bay. They carefully moved the pod to their shuttle, and then, to the Pioneers' hope, by the time they had it installed in the science bay, word had spread throughout the ship. The crew gathered to look at their unusual passenger through the pod's viewing window. That's the ugliest thing I've ever seen, Bobby Hayes said, wrinkling his nose. And I've been married 3 times. Amy Foster took one look and left immediately. I'm not staying in the same room with that, she called over her shoulder. Even Corinne Wells, who was usually calm about everything, seemed disturbed. Are you sure this is safe, Captain? That thing looks dangerous. Jake watched the creature floating in its pod. It had not moved since they brought it aboard, but somehow he felt like it was aware of them, like it was listening. Dr. Parker will monitor it closely, Jake said. If it shows any signs of aggression, we'll deal with it then. Lisa was already setting up her equipment around the pod. I'm going to try bringing it out of stasis slowly. We need to learn everything we can about it. Just remember, Doctor, Jake said quietly, the safety of this crew comes first. If that thing becomes a threat, we space it immediately. Lisa nodded, but Jake could see she was already becoming attached to the creature. She looked at it the way someone might look at a lost puppy, despite its horrifying appearance. The rest of the crew was not so understanding. As they left the science bay, Jake heard Bobby mutter to Tony, I give it a week before that thing tries to eat someone. Jake hoped Bobby was wrong. But looking back at the creature one more time, he had to admit that his chief engineer might be right. The thing in the pod looked like something out of humanity's worst nightmares. Still, they had found it, and now it was their responsibility. For better or worse, the Pioneers' hope had a new passenger. Dr. Lisa Parker had never been more excited about anything in her entire career. 3 days had passed since they brought the alien aboard, and she had barely slept. The creature, which she had started calling Gizmo much to everyone's annoyance, was unlike anything in Earth's fossil record or imagination. The bone structure is completely alien, she explained to Captain Morrison during her daily briefings. It has 6 limbs, but they're not like anything we've seen. Each one can function as either a leg or an arm, depending on what it needs to do. Jake listened patiently, though he could see the exhaustion in Lisa's eyes. How is it adjusting to being awake? Lisa's face lit up. That's the fascinating part, Captain. It's incredibly adaptive. Within hours of coming out of stasis, it was exploring its containment area and figuring out how everything worked. It's definitely intelligent. Intelligent how? Jake asked. He had visited the science bay several times, and all he saw was a revolting creature that made horrible clicking noises and left trails of slime everywhere it went. Watch this, Lisa said, leading him to the containment area. The transparent aluminum barrier was the only thing between them and Gizmo, who was currently examining a simple puzzle box that Lisa had given it. The creature's multiple eyes focused on the box while its appendages manipulated the various sliding pieces. Within minutes, it had solved the puzzle and opened the box to reveal the food treat inside. Then it looked directly at Jake and Lisa, made a series of clicking sounds, and seemed to smile if such a thing was possible with that mouthful of teeth. See? Lisa said proudly. It's trying to communicate with us. I think those clicking sounds are its language. Jake had to admit that was impressive, but the creature still made his skin crawl. Its oily skin seemed to shift colors when it moved, and the way its eyes moved independently reminded him of a chameleon crossed with a spider. Has it shown any aggressive behavior? None at all, Lisa replied. It's actually quite gentle. Yesterday, I accidentally left my scanner too close to the barrier, and instead of trying to damage it, Gizmo carefully pushed it back through the gap toward me. Despite Lisa's enthusiasm, the rest of the crew was not warming up to their passenger, Bobby. Hayes had been complaining loudly about the creature since day one, and his complaints were getting worse. That thing is destroying my ship, Bobby told Jake later that day in engineering. Look at this. Bobby showed Jake several wall panels that had been corroded by some kind of acid. The metal was pitted and weakened, and in some places had been eaten completely through. The creature did this? Jake asked. Has to be, Bobby replied. Started showing up right after you brought that nightmare aboard. The trail leads right from the science bay through the corridors. That thing is leaking acid everywhere it goes. Jake frowned. This was exactly what he had been worried about. Have you told Dr. Parker? I tried, but she just says it's natural secretions and not dangerous. Easy for her to say when it's not her job to keep this bucket of bolts flying. Bobby gestured at the damaged walls. If this keeps up, we'll have hull breaches by the time we reach Earth. The situation got worse the next morning when Navigator Steve Coleman came storming onto the bridge, angrier than Jake had ever seen him. Captain, that creature was in my quarters last night, Steve said, his face red with fury. I woke up and found it going through my personal belongings. That's impossible, Jake replied. It's contained in the science bay. Tell that to my ruined photo albums, Steve shot back. The thing must have squeezed through the air ducts somehow. It was examining everything with those horrible sucker things it has for feet. My family pictures are covered in slime now. Jake called Lisa to the bridge immediately. When she arrived, she looked defensive before anyone even said anything. Gizmo is naturally curious, she explained. It's just trying to understand its environment. That's a sign of high intelligence. It's a sign that your pet monster is loose. On my ship, Steve replied. I want it gone, Captain. Space it, sell it to a zoo. I don't care. Just get it off the Pioneer's Hope. Other crew members began to speak up. Amy Foster refused to leave her quarters after dark, afraid she might encounter the creature in the corridors. Tony Rodriguez reported finding more acid trails in the weapons bay, and he was concerned about potential damage to critical systems. Even Karen Wells, who usually stayed neutral in crew disputes, admitted that the creature made her nervous. It's always watching, Karen told Jake privately. Those eyes follow you around the room. It's like it's studying us. Lisa became increasingly protective of Gizmo as the crew's hostility grew. She started spending entire shifts in the science bay, talking to the creature and trying to teach it simple words. To everyone's surprise, Gizmo seemed to be learning. Yesterday it repeated back 3 words I taught it, Lisa told Jake excitedly. well, sort of repeated them. The clicking sounds are definitely changing when I say different things. But the crew was not impressed by Gizmo's learning ability. They were more concerned about the growing number of minor system failures that seemed to coincide with the creatures. Nighttime explorations. The lights in Corridor 7 flickered constantly. Now, the air recycling system in Section 3 made strange noises. The food processors occasionally produced meals that tasted like metal. The breaking point came 5 days after Gizmo had awakened. Chief Hayes called Jake to engineering with panic in his voice. "Captain, you need to see this now," Bobby said. Over the Jake arrived to find Bobby staring at the main power coupling for their faster-than-light drive. The coupling was partially dissolved, its protective casing eaten away by acid. Sparks occasionally flew from the damaged components. "If this fails completely, we're stuck in deep space," Bobby said grimly. "No FTL drive means no way home except at sublight speeds, which would take about 40 years. Jake felt cold anger building in his chest. The creature did this? Has to be. Look at the acid pattern. It's the same as all the other damage. Bobby pointed to a trail of corrosion that led from the coupling toward the ventilation system. That thing has been crawling around inside our walls like some kind of parasite. Jake called an emergency. Meeting in the mess hall. The entire crew gathered, and the mood was ugly. Even before Jake spoke, people were talking about spacing Gizmo immediately. "I say we put it back in its pod and jettison it," Tony Rodriguez said. "The creature is obviously dangerous, and it's damaging critical systems. We could sell it at the next space station," Amy Foster suggested. "Let someone else deal with it." Steve Coleman was more direct. "I say we space it now and be done with it. The thing is a mess." Lisa stood up, her face flushed with anger. "You're all being ridiculous. Gizmo isn't trying to hurt anyone. It's exploring because it's intelligent and curious. The acid secretion is probably just a defense mechanism. A defense mechanism that's going to get us all killed when the life support fails." Bobby replied. Jake looked around the room at his crew. These were good people, experienced spacers who had worked together for years. But fear was making them turn against each other, and that was dangerous in deep space. "Dr. Parker, is there any way to stop the acid secretion?" Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. "I don't even understand what causes it yet. It might be involuntary, like sweating." "Then we need to make a decision," Jake said. "The safety of this crew and this ship comes first. I'm sorry, Lisa, but the creature has to be contained more securely or removed entirely." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. "Captain, please, give me more time. I'm making real progress with communication. Gizmo is trying to tell us something important. I know it. What it's trying to tell us is that it wants to eat us," Tony said grimly. "Look at those teeth, Doctor. That's not the mouth of something that eats plants." The crew voted informally, and the result was unanimous except for Lisa. Gizmo had to go. They would transfer it to the next space station they encountered and let someone else deal with it. Jake made the announcement official, and Lisa stormed out of the mess hall in tears. That night, her clicking voice could be heard from the science bay as she talked to Gizmo, probably trying to explain what was going to happen. The creature's responding clicks seemed sadder somehow, though Jake told himself that was just his imagination. It was just an animal, after all. An intelligent animal, maybe, but still just an animal. But as he tried to sleep that night, Jake found himself wondering what Lisa had meant when she said Gizmo was trying to tell them something important. The creature's eyes had seemed almost desperate lately, and its clicking had become more urgent. He pushed the thought away. His crew's safety was more important than satisfying curiosity about an alien pet. In 2 days, they would reach Way Station. Alpha and Gizmo would become someone else's problem. Jake just hoped they could keep their ship running that long. The distress signal came through just as Captain Jake Morrison was reviewing the transfer papers for Gizmo. In 6 hours, they would reach Way Station Alpha, and the alien creature would become someone else's responsibility. Jake had mixed feelings about it, but the decision was made. "Captain, we're receiving an emergency broadcast," Amy Foster called from her communication station. "It's coming from the colony ship New Horizon." Jake looked up from his paperwork. The New Horizon was one of the largest colony ships ever built, carrying over 3,000 people to establish a new settlement in the Kepler system. "What's their status?" Amy's face went pale as she listened to the transmission. "Captain, they've suffered complete engine failure. They're stranded in space with no propulsion and minimal life support." "Set course for their location immediately," Jake ordered. Karen Wells quickly plotted the intercept course, while Tony Rodriguez began preparing emergency supplies for a rescue operation. "Sir, there's something else," Amy said quietly. The transmission was cut off suddenly. They were in the middle of explaining their situation when the signal just stopped. Jake felt a cold chill run down his spine. Colony ships didn't just cut off emergency transmissions. How long to reach them? 4 hours at maximum speed, Karen replied. Jake made the announcement to the crew. Whatever problems they had with their alien passenger would have to wait. 3,000 human lives were in danger, and the Pioneer's Hope was the only ship close enough to help. Dr. Lisa Parker emerged from the science bay when she heard the announcement. Her eyes were red from crying, but she looked determined. "Captain, I want to help with the rescue operation." "Lisa, your expertise is xenobiology, not emergency medicine," Jake replied gently. "I'm still a doctor," she said firmly. "If there are injured people on that ship, you'll need every trained medic you can get." Jake nodded. She was right, and he could use her help. "All right, Doctor. Tony, start preparing medical supplies and emergency equipment." As they raced through space toward the New Horizon, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Colony ships were built with multiple backup systems. Complete engine failure was almost impossible unless something catastrophic had happened. "Captain," Amy called 4 hours later, her voice tight with fear. "Long-range sensors are picking up the New Horizon. But, sir, they're not alone." Jake looked at the main display screen and felt his heart sink. The massive colony ship hung helpless. In space, its engines dark and cold, but surrounding it were 3 enormous alien vessels, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything in the human fleet. "My God," Karen whispered. "Those ships are huge." Jake studied the alien vessels. They were different from the derelict ship where they had found Gizmo. These were clearly warships, bristling with weapons and defensive systems. Their hulls were a metallic green color, and they moved with the precise formation of a military fleet. "Captain, we're being hailed," Amy reported. "It's coming from the lead alien ship." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered, though every instinct told him to run. The face that appeared on their main display was like something from humanity's worst nightmares. The alien had gray, leathery skin stretched tight over a skull-like face. Its eyes were completely black, and its mouth was filled with rows of sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice was translated by their computer into mechanical, emotionless words. "Human vessel, you will halt immediately. This system is now under hegemony control. The inferior species aboard the colony ship will be processed for useful work." Jake stepped forward, trying to keep his voice calm. "This is Captain Morrison of the human vessel Pioneer's Hope. We are here to assist the colony ship with emergency repairs. We have no hostile intentions." The alien's black eyes seemed to look right through him. "Human Morrison, you do not understand. The beings you call colonists are now property of the hegemony. You will surrender your vessel for processing as well, or you will be destroyed. Processed? Jake asked, though he feared he already knew. The answer: useful specimens will be kept for labor. Defective specimens will be eliminated. This is efficient use of resources. Tony Rodriguez was already checking their weapon systems, but Jake could see from his expression that the news was bad. The Pioneer's hope was a research vessel with only light defensive weapons. Against 3 alien warships, they had no chance. In a direct fight, how long do we have? Jake asked quietly. The alien commander tilted its head slightly. You have one of your time units called hours to surrender. After that, we will demonstrate the consequences of resistance by destroying sections of the colony ship. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in shocked silence. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing his own fear reflected in their faces. 3,000 innocent people were about to be enslaved or killed, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Options? Jake asked his officers. Karen checked her instruments. We could try to run, Captain. Our engines are faster than theirs. We might be able to escape and call for help. Help that would take weeks to arrive, Tony added grimly. By then, the colonists would be long gone. What about a rescue attempt? Lisa suggested. We could try to evacuate as many people as possible. Tony shook his head. Our ship can hold maybe 200 people in an emergency. That leaves over 2,000 behind. Jake stared at the alien ships on the display. He had faced dangerous situations before, but never anything like this. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was worse than their darkest fears. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting more ships approaching, Amy reported. At least 6 more hegemony vessels, arriving in approximately 2 hours. The situation went from hopeless to impossible. Even if Jake could somehow devise a plan to defeat 3 alien warships, he certainly couldn't handle 9 of them. Captain, Karen said quietly, maybe we should consider evacuating who we can and escaping to warm Earth. It was the logical choice. Save a few hundred lives and warn humanity about the alien threat. But that meant abandoning thousands of people to slavery or death. Jake had never abandoned anyone under his command, and he wasn't about to start now. In the science bay, something was happening that none of them noticed. Gizmo had become increasingly agitated since the alien ships appeared. The creature was clicking frantically, moving around its containment area in obvious distress. Its oily skin was shifting colors rapidly, and its multiple eyes were all focused on the displays showing the hegemony vessels. Dr. Parker would have noticed immediately, but she was on the bridge preparing for what seemed like their final mission. Gizmo pressed against the transparent barrier of its containment area, making urgent clicking sounds that the ship's computer couldn't translate. On the bridge, Jake was running through desperate scenarios in his mind. A surprise attack might disable one alien ship, but the other 2 would destroy them immediately. A direct assault was suicide. There had to be another way. 30 minutes until the deadline, Amy reported. Jake made his decision. We're going to try to evacuate as many colonists as possible. If we can save even a few hundred lives, it's worth the attempt. Sir, that's a death sentence for the rest, Tony said. So is surrendering, Jake replied. At least this way, some people make it home. Lisa looked thoughtful. Captain, what if there's something we don't know about these aliens? Some weakness we could exploit. Like what? Jake asked. I don't know, but the universe is full of things we don't understand yet. Maybe there's a reason they want prisoners, instead of just destroying the colony ship outright. Jake appreciated her optimism, but they were out of time and options. He was about to order the desperate evacuation attempt when Amy suddenly looked up from her communications console. Captain, I'm picking up some kind of transmission from our own ship. It's very faint, and I can't identify the source. Jake frowned. What kind of transmission? It's not in any human language. Actually, it sounds almost like clicking noises, but with a pattern to them, like it might be some kind of code. Lisa's eyes widened. Captain, that might be Gizmo. It's been agitated ever since the alien ships appeared. The creature is trying to communicate, Jake asked. Maybe it recognizes something about those ships, Lisa said excitedly. Captain, what if Gizmo knows something about these aliens? What if that's what it's been trying to tell us all along? Jake looked at the countdown timer. 25 minutes until the hegemony deadline. It was insane to pin their hopes on an alien creature that they barely understood, but they were out of conventional options. Dr. Parker, go to the science bay and see what you can learn, but be quick about it. Lisa ran from the bridge while Jake stared at the alien warships on his display. 3,000 lives hung in the balance, and their only hope might be a hideous alien creature that his crew had voted to abandon. It was either the most desperate gamble of his career or the stupidest decision he had ever made. In 25 minutes, he would find out which. Dr. Lisa Parker ran through the corridors of the Pioneer's Hope faster than she had ever run in her life. 20 minutes remained before the hegemony deadline, and their only hope lay with a creature that her own crewmates wanted to abandon. When she reached the science bay, she found Gizmo in a state of extreme agitation. The creature was pressing itself against the transparent barrier, all of its eyes focused on the displays that showed the alien warships. Its clicking had become rapid and urgent, almost frantic. Gizmo, what is it? Lisa asked, though she knew. The creature couldn't understand her words. What are you trying to tell me? The creature turned all of its eyes toward her and began clicking in a different pattern. Lisa had been studying these sounds for days, trying to find some meaning in them. She had noticed that certain clicks seemed to correspond to different emotions or situations, but she had never been able to make a breakthrough. Now, with time running out, she made a desperate decision. She activated the ship's universal translator and fed Gizmo's clicking sounds through the same language matrix that was being used to communicate with the hegemony commander God at first. Nothing happened. The computer analyzed the sounds and reported no recognizable language patterns. But then Lisa noticed something strange. When she played back the recordings of the hegemony commander's voice, Gizmo became even more agitated. The creature was responding to the alien language. Computer, analyze the frequency patterns in both the hegemony transmission and Gizmo's vocalizations. Lisa ordered. The results appeared on her screen, and Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. There were similarities in the underlying structure. Not identical, but related, like two dialects of the same language family. Computer, attempt translation using modified hegemony language parameters, Lisa said, her hands shaking as she worked. The universal translator processed Gizmo's clicks using the new parameters. Slowly, words began to appear on Lisa's screen. At first, they were garbled and incomplete, but as the computer refined its analysis, the meaning became clear. Danger, hegemony, slavers, no weakness, help humans. Please listen. Lisa stared at the screen in shock. Gizmo wasn't just an animal. It was intelligent, and it had been trying to warn them about the hegemony all along. Computer, establish two-way communication using these parameters, Lisa ordered. A new interface appeared on her screen, converting her words into clicking sounds that Gizmo could understand. When the creature heard the translated sounds, it stopped its frantic movements and focused all of its attention on Lisa. Can you understand me now? Lisa asked through the translator. Gizmo's response appeared on her screen immediately. Yes. Finally understand. Thought humans could not learn hegemony speech. Lisa felt tears running down her face. For days, this creature had been trying to communicate vital information, and they had dismissed it as animal noises. What are you? What do you know about the hegemony? I am Keth, My people were first to be enslaved by hegemony many cycles ago. They use us as scouts and saboteurs because all species find us disgusting. We are ignored, underestimated. This is useful to hegemony. The pieces suddenly fell into place. The acid trails that had been damaging the ship weren't random vandalism. Gizmo had been trying to mark important systems, probably attempting to show them something crucial. The acid damage to our ship, Lisa said. What were you trying to do? Trying to show humans how to disable hegemony ships. Acid secretion can destroy their shield generators. But humans thought I was destroying ship by accident. Lisa's mind raced. 15 minutes remained before the deadline. Can you help us defeat the hegemony ships? Yes, no weakness, but must act quickly. More ships coming soon. Lisa activated the comm system. Captain Morrison to the science bay immediately. Emergency priority. Jake's voice crackled through the speaker. Lisa, we don't have time for. Captain Gizmo can talk. It knows how to defeat the hegemony ships. Get down here now. There was a moment of stunned silence, then Jake's voice again. On my way. Jake arrived with Tony Rodriguez and Karen Wells. They found Lisa standing next to Gizmo's containment area, tears still streaming down her face. Captain, Lisa said, her voice shaking with excitement and fear. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Gizmo is not an animal. Its name is actually something we can't pronounce, but it belongs to a species called the Keth. They were enslaved by the hegemony centuries ago. Jake looked skeptical. Lisa, I know you're upset about us transferring the creature, but Captain, please, Lisa interrupted. She activated the translator. Gizmo, tell them who you are. The creature's clicking sounds were immediately converted to text on the display screen. I am Scout Saboteur of the Keth. My people serve hegemony because we have no choice. But I choose to help humans instead. Jake stared at the screen, then at the creature. This is impossible. Captain Morrison appeared on the screen. Your species is in great danger. Hegemony will not stop with one colony ship. They will enslave or destroy all humans unless you learn to fight them properly. Tony stepped forward, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. How do we know this isn't a trap? This creature could be working for the hegemony. Gizmo's response was immediate. If I worked for hegemony, your ship would already be disabled. I could have destroyed your engines days ago instead of trying to show you their weakness. Jake looked. At his watch, 10 minutes remained. Assuming this is real, what do you propose we do? We're outnumbered and outgunned. Hegemony ships have critical vulnerability, Gizmo explained through the translator. Shield generators on underside of each vessel. If generators are destroyed simultaneously, ships become defenseless, but must hit all 3 ships at exact same time or plan fails. Karen checked her tactical display. Captain, our weapons aren't powerful enough to penetrate their armor, even without shields. Do not need penetration. Gizmo's translation appeared. Need precision placement of acid charges. My secretions can eat through generator housing if applied correctly. Tony frowned. You're talking about a suicide mission. Someone would have to fly directly underneath each ship and manually place charges. Yes, this is why I survived when podmates died. Was meant to help humans fight hegemony. Jake felt the weight of 3,000 lives pressing down on him. Even if we could somehow place the charges, we only have 1 shuttle. How do we hit 3 ships simultaneously? Timing is everything, Gizmo explained. Charges must be placed within 30 seconds of each other. I can survive in space vacuum for short periods. Can pilot shuttle to each ship, Lisa gasped. Gizmo, that's suicide. You'd never survive 3 separate runs. Better to die fighting hegemony than live as slave, the creature replied. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all staring at the display screen in shock. The idea that their pet monster was actually an intelligent being trying to save them was almost too much to process. "Captain," Amy's voice came through the comm system, 5 minutes until the deadline. "The hegemony commander is demanding an immediate response." Jake made the hardest decision of his career. "Dr. Parker, release Gizmo from containment. Tony, prepare our shuttle with everything we need for this mission." "Captain, are you sure about this?" Karen asked. "We're betting everything on the word of an alien we've known for less than a week." Jake looked at Gizmo through the transparent barrier. The creature's multiple eyes were all focused on him, and despite its horrifying appearance, Jake could see something almost human in its expression. Determination, hope, courage. "We're out of conventional options," Jake said. "If we do nothing, 3,000 people die or become slaves. At least this gives us a chance." Tony started to protest, but Jake held up his hand. "That's an order, Chief. We're doing this." "Lisa, quickly shut down the containment field." Gizmo immediately scuttled toward the door, its 6 legs moving with surprising grace. Up close, its appearance was even more revolting than Jake had remembered, but now he tried to see past the ugly exterior to the intelligent being beneath. "Gizmo," Jake said, using the translator, "if we do this, there's no guarantee any of us will survive." Captain Morrison appeared on the screen. "My people have waited centuries for chance to strike back at hegemony. We'll not waste this opportunity." They moved quickly to the shuttle bay. Tony had loaded the small craft with acid-resistant containers and remote detonators. Gizmo examined the equipment with its strange appendages, making suggestions through the translator about placement and timing. "Hegemony shields regenerate quickly," Gizmo explained. "Must hit all 3 generators within 30 seconds, or they will compensate for damage." Jake studied the tactical situation on his display. The 3 alien warships were positioned in a triangular formation around the colony ship. The shuttle would have to cover a lot of distance very quickly. 2 minutes until deadline, Amy reported. "Amy, open a channel to the hegemony commander." Jake ordered, "Tell them we need more time to consider their offer. Stall as long as you can." Jake turned to Gizmo. "Are you absolutely certain about this plan?" "Certainty is luxury we cannot afford," Gizmo replied, "but is only chance for humans to survive." Lisa stepped forward. "Gizmo, I want you to know that. I'm sorry. Sorry, we didn't understand what you were trying to tell us. Sorry, we treated you like an animal." "Dr. Parker showed kindness when others showed fear," Gizmo responded. Captain Jake Morrison watched the tactical display with his heart pounding as Gizmo's shuttle approached the first hegemony warship. The alien vessel was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Pioneer's Hope, and bristling with weapons that could vaporize their small research ship in seconds. "Amy, are you still keeping the hegemony commander talking?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir, but he's getting impatient. I don't think I can stall much longer." On the display, the shuttle had reached the underside of the first warship. Jake could see the shuttle's lights as it maneuvered into position near what Gizmo had identified as the shield generator. The hegemony ship seemed unaware of the tiny craft beneath it. "First charge placed," Tony reported, monitoring the shuttle's progress. "Gizmo's moving to the second ship." Dr. Lisa Parker stood beside Jake, her hands clenched so tightly that her knuckles were white. "Come on, Gizmo," she whispered. "You can do this." The shuttle accelerated toward the second hegemony vessel. Jake could see defensive fire beginning to track the small craft as the aliens finally noticed the intrusion. Bright energy beams lanced through space, missing the shuttle by mere meters. "Gizmo's a good pilot," Karen Wells observed with grudging respect. "Better than most humans I've seen." The creature was indeed skillfully evading the enemy fire, using the shuttle's small size and maneuverability to stay ahead of the larger ship's weapons. But Jake could see that the defensive fire was getting more accurate with each passing second. "Second charge placed," Tony announced, moving to the third ship. That was when everything went wrong. The third hegemony warship had repositioned itself, bringing more weapons to bear on the shuttle. A massive energy beam clipped the small craft's engine section, sending it spinning out of control. "Shuttle's been hit," Tony reported grimly. "Engine damage, life support failing." On the display, Jake could see the shuttle tumbling through space, trailing debris and atmosphere. Any normal pilot would have been killed by the impact, but somehow Gizmo managed to regain control. "Captain," Amy said urgently, "the hegemony commander is demanding an immediate response. He says if we don't surrender in the next 30 seconds, he'll start destroying sections of the colony ship." Jake felt the weight of 3,000 lives pressing down on him. The plan was failing, and he was about to watch helpless colonists die because of his desperate gamble. But then something extraordinary happened. Despite the damage to its shuttle, Gizmo continued toward the third hegemony ship. The craft was barely flying, leaking atmosphere and sparking from damaged systems, but the alien creature pressed on. "Gizmo, abort the mission," Lisa said into the communicator. "Your shuttle's too damaged. Get out of there." The response came back through the translator, barely audible over the static from the damaged communication system. "Cannot abort. Too many humans will die. Must complete mission." Jake watched in amazement as the crippled shuttle somehow reached the third warship. More defensive fire erupted around it, but Gizmo managed to maneuver into position beneath the shield generator. "Third charge placed," Tony reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "All 3 charges are in position. Detonating charges now." Gizmo's message appeared on the screen. 3 brilliant explosions lit up space simultaneously as the acid charges ate through the shield generators on all 3 hegemony warships. The alien vessels' protective barriers flickered and died, leaving them vulnerable for the first time in the battle. "Shields are down on all 3 ships," Karen reported excitedly. "They're completely defenseless." But the victory came at a terrible cost. Gizmo's shuttle had been caught in the explosion of the third ship's shield generator. The small craft was tumbling through space, its hull cracked open and trailing debris. "Gizmo, respond," Lisa called into the communicator. "Gizmo, are you there?" There was no answer. The shuttle continued to drift, dark and lifeless. On the main display, the hegemony commander's face appeared again, but now his expression had changed from arrogant confidence to shocked disbelief. "Impossible," the alien said. "Our defenses cannot be compromised by inferior species." Jake stepped forward, feeling a cold fury building in his chest. This creature had just watched one of the bravest beings he had ever met sacrifice its life to save humanity, and it still spoke of inferior species. "Your defenses just were compromised," Jake said firmly, "by someone you would have called inferior. Now I'm giving you 30 seconds to withdraw from this system, or we'll show you what else this inferior species can do." It was a bluff, of course. The Pioneer's hope still couldn't match the firepower of 3 hegemony warships, even without their shields. But Jake was betting that the aliens' shock and confusion would work in humanity's favor. The hegemony commander's black eyes narrowed. "You have no weapons capable of harming our vessels." "Maybe not," Jake replied. "But we have something you don't understand. We have allies willing to die for us, and we're willing to die for them. How many of your own people would make that sacrifice for you?" For a moment, the alien commander said nothing. Jake could see something like uncertainty in those black eyes. Then the hegemony ships began to move, pulling back from the colony ship. "This is not over, humans," the commander said. "The hegemony will return with greater force." "We'll be ready," Jake replied, though he hoped it wouldn't come to that. The three alien warships accelerated away, disappearing into faster-than-light travel. Jake immediately ordered rescue shuttles to search for survivors from Gizmo's craft. But deep down, he knew it was hopeless. No one could survive the kind of damage he had witnessed. Still, they searched for 3 hours, scanning every piece of debris. It was Lisa who finally found what remained of the shuttle, buried in the wreckage of twisted metal and burned components. "Captain," Lisa's voice came over the comm, barely controlled. "I found something." When the rescue team brought Lisa back, she was carrying a small piece of metal in her hands. It was part of the shuttle's interior wall, and scratched into its surface were marks that the translator recognized as Keth writing. "What does it say?" Jake asked gently. Lisa's voice broke as she read the translation. "Thank you for not spacing me. Thank you for calling me friend." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Gizmo had scratched that message into the wall during its final moments, even as its shuttle was breaking apart around it. Despite everything the crew had put it through, despite their fear and rejection, the creature's last thoughts had been of gratitude. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all standing in shocked silence, finally understanding what they had lost. Bobby Hayes, who had complained so loudly about the acid damage, was wiping tears from his eyes. Tony Rodriguez, who had wanted to space the creature, was staring at the floor. Even Steve Coleman, who had been so angry about Gizmo being in his quarters, looked stricken. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the New Horizon. They want to thank us for the rescue." Jake nodded. "Tell them we couldn't have done it alone. Tell them about Gizmo." Over the next few hours, as they helped evacuate the most seriously injured colonists from the New Horizon, the story spread throughout both ships. The hideous alien creature that everyone had wanted to get rid of had saved them all through an act of incredible courage and sacrifice. Dr. Parker spent those hours in her lab, writing a detailed report about Gizmo and the Keth species. She made sure to include everything she had learned about their intelligence, their forced servitude to the hegemony, and their desperate desire for freedom. "I want everyone to know what really happened here," she told Jake. "I want them to understand that we almost threw away the bravest soul any of us will ever meet." 3 days later, as the Pioneer's Hope finally approached Earth, Jake called the crew together in the mess hall. The mood was somber, but there was also something else. A sense of having learned something important about themselves and about what it meant to judge others. "We've all been changed by what happened," Jake began. "We learned that courage and intelligence can come in forms we don't expect or understand. We learned that sometimes the most important person in the room is the one everyone else wants to ignore." He looked around at his crew, seeing the same understanding in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. "When we get home, there will be questions about first contact protocols and military preparedness. But I want us to remember something else. I want us to remember that our greatest strength as humans isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to recognize worth in others, even when they don't look like us or think like us." Lisa stood up, holding the piece of metal with Gizmo's final message. "I move that we name our next ship the Gizmo, in honor of the first alien to die defending humanity." The vote was unanimous. As Earth grew larger on their display screens, Jake made one final log entry about their mission. He wrote about the derelict ship, the rescue of the colonists, and the first contact with the hegemony. But mostly he wrote about a hideous alien creature that his crew had dismissed as a monster. Right up until it did the unthinkable. It had shown them what true heroism looked like, and in doing so, it had made them all better humans. The Pioneer's Hope arrived at Earth, carrying not just rescued colonists and news of alien contact, but a lesson that would change how humanity approached the universe forever. Sometimes the most important discovery